Critical race theory is a way at looking at the law and understanding where we have been in the law and where it is that we're going. It is a framework for understanding the ways in which law is not neutral, but rather has structured and created racial inequality. Race theory also gives us tools for how to make change.
One question I think a lot of people have had, and I know I had myself, is why now? Critical race theory has been around for several decades, and it isn't the first time that there have been people who've taken exceptions to some of its ideas, but this particular highly public targeted campaign, a disinformation campaign, really seemed to take off in the fall of 2020. I think I mark it when Trump gave a speech at Mount Rushmore in which he mentioned critical race theory, and then shortly thereafter, Christopher Rufo, who's one of the architects of the anti-CRT campaign, started appearing on Fox News, and there was an explosion of mentions of critical race theory, and then Trump issued his executive order in the fall. A federal judge struck it down because it was clearly unconstitutional. But what it laid the groundwork for was what came after, promoting copycat bills targeting public schools and the question of education. And it turned out there was a briefing book. Christopher Rufo had developed a plan for how to generate what looked like grassroots supports for this, what kind of arguments to make. It was all laid out. And then Rufo himself started tweeting about what his objectives were, which he said is to make the brand toxic, to associate any insanity and any craziness that's out there that people dislike with the brand critical race theory. And I draw it from the fact that if we think about where things were after the summer of 2020, or during the summer of 2020, when there were so many people urgently pressing the question of how and why these deaths had become routine. So I think it was not happenstance that in that particular moment where we had an administration that was fighting for its political life and looking for a boat to sail on against what it perceived as this tsunami of a social movement that was demanding a different kind of approach, that they would latch on to something that looked like an easy target.
So the anti-CRT movement is affecting educational policy in a couple of ways. So one is the explicit prohibition on teachers teaching honestly about issues of race and oppression. What many of the bans will say is, oh no, we're not saying you can't teach about slavery, we can't teach about history, but what they are saying is that we can't teach about the implications of those things, that we can only teach them as, oh, that happened, it ended in 1865, maybe we had some Jim Crow for a couple of years, but then the Civil Rights Movement happened, we had Brown versus Board of Education, and now everything is fine. And the inability of teachers to be able to contextualize all of this history and actually show how it has continued on through the present day is a huge impact on education and education policy.
CRT Forward is our first real foray into taking some of the ideas that we have and bringing them into the level of helping policymakers and litigators and ordinary people with some of the framing and information that they need in order to deal with the on-the-ground circumstances that they're facing. We're well situated as a research unit to be able to both think about how to put the information together in ways that are useful, as well as help people understand what are some of the patterns and connections that are there. What I envision is that we can become a support arm for those who are really interested in keeping honesty in education against this effort to press the mute button on what are some of the critical conversations and discussions that we have to have.
I think this project has such an opportunity to bring CRT in a way, like we say, forward, for it not to be in the shadows, for it not to be relegated to, oh, this is this esoteric, old legal framework that you should only learn in law schools. I think what the CRT Forward project is showing is that the battles over CRT are not just happening in law schools. They're happening everywhere. And that's really about starting now to take the theory and move it into practice. It should be something that we consider to be a framework about subordination, not just in the law, but writ large. It really gives us a framework for understanding what the law could be and helps us get there.